All right, so we're diving into something today that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Okay, yeah.
These little oops moments that we do in our movement that we don't even realize, can have some pretty big consequences down the road. And I'm excited to dig in because
Absolutely.
you shared this this fitness podcast episode that really got me thinking about how these seemingly small movement faults during exercise or even just everyday activities can really throw things out of whack.
It's really interesting, because our bodies are incredibly adaptable.
Right.
So we kind of develop these movement patterns over time.
Yeah.
And often without realizing they're not the most optimal.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And it's kind of like driving with the parking brake.
Okay.
Slightly engaged.
Okay.
Might not notice it at first.
Right.
But eventually it's going to lead to some wear and tear.
That's a great analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
And I bet just like ignoring a parking brake.
Ignoring these movement faults can lead to some pretty serious problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's dive right into the first one that they talked about in the podcast.
Okay.
Rounding your back during deadlifts and squats.
Yep.
I've always heard that that's a big no-no.
Absolutely.
But I've never really fully understood why.
Well, it all comes down to the spine.
Okay.
When we're lifting those heavy weights.
Yeah.
Especially with exercises like deadlifts and squats.
Right.
That rounded back puts a ton of pressure on the intervertebral discs.
Okay.
Think of the discs like shock absorbers.
Okay, yeah.
They're designed to handle these compressive forces.
Right.
But when the spine is flexed or rounded, in this case, that pressure just becomes so unevenly distributed.
Oh, I see.
And it increases the risk of injury.
So it's not just about aesthetics then?
No, not at all.
It's really about...
It's about protecting that spine.
Protecting the integrity of our spine.
Yes, exactly.
Now, they talked a lot about the hip hinge being so crucial.
Yes, for maintaining a neutral spine during these exercises.
Absolutely.
Can you walk us through what a proper hip hinge looks like?
Yeah, so the hip hinge is essentially like the ability to fold at your hips while keeping a straight back.
Okay.
It's a fundamental movement pattern we use in so many things.
Yeah, for sure.
From lifting groceries to, athletic exercises.
Pretty much everything.
The key is to really initiate that movement by pushing your hips back.
Okay.
Almost like you're trying to reach a wall behind you with your butt rather than bending from the waist.
I got it. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. I'm starting to see how that can help prevent that rounding of the back. Yeah. Now, they recommended using a dowel rod as a tool to practice the hip hinge. What's the reasoning behind that?
So the dowel rod basically acts as a feedback tool.
Okay.
So it helps you feel the correct alignment throughout that movement. So you hold the dowel rod along your back, and you want to keep contact with your upper back and your tailbone.
Got it.
As you hinge at the hips, the dowel rod should stay in contact with those 3 points.
Oh, okay.
So it ensures that your back is staying straight.
So it's really giving you that feedback.
Yes, exactly.
To make sure that you're not rounding.
Yeah.
I've always wondered with that inward knee collapse during squats, if it's purely a strength issue or if there's like other factors at play there.
Yeah, it's definitely multifactorial.
Okay.
Weak glutes are often kind of the primary culprit.
Okay.
But you also have things like poor ankle mobility.
Oh, interesting.
Or even just lack of awareness.
Okay.
That can contribute to it.
Okay.
So when your glutes aren't firing properly, your body's going to find ways to compensate.
It will, yeah.
And that often leads to the knees caving in.
Yeah.
It's almost like your body's trying to cheat the system.
Oh, interesting.
And find the path of least resistance. Right. Even if it's not the safest or the most efficient option.
This is really making me think about how I approach my own squats.
Yeah.
So I'm eager to try some of these cues and see if I can improve my form.
Awesome.
What's next on the list?
So let's move up the chain a little bit.
Okay.
From the knees to the lower back.
Okay.
We'll talk about that tendency to overarch the lower back during overhead presses.
This one hits close to home because I've definitely been guilty of turning an overhead press into a backbend competition.
Yeah.
So what's the issue with that?
So that tendency to overarch is often a sign of a few things.
Okay.
So you might have weak core muscles.
Okay.
You might have tight lats or even limited shoulder mobility.
Okay.
Can all contribute to this faulty movement pattern.
Okay.
Your core should be acting like a stabilizing corset.
Right.
Preventing that excessive extension in your lower back. But if those muscles aren't firing properly, your lower back ends up taking on the brunt of the load.
That makes me think of those people who do those like weighted sit-ups.
Oh, yeah.
With their feet anchored.
Yeah.
And it just seems like they're putting more stress on their lower back than they are on their abs. So it's similar to that.
Absolutely.
Got it.
The key is to really maintain that neutral spine throughout the entire movement.
Yeah.
Engaging your core.
Okay.
To prevent that overextension.
So just like with that hip hinge, it's really about being aware of your body's positioning.
The awareness is key.
They had this funny cue in the podcast.
Oh, yeah?
About bracing your core as if someone were about to punch you in the gut.
Uh-huh. Right.
It's so silly.
It is.
But it really gets the point across.
Visual cues can be so helpful in understanding how to engage the right muscles.
That's so true.
So instead of thinking about sucking in your stomach, imagine like you're bracing for that impact, and that's going to help you activate those deep core muscles.
Yeah.
And create that stabilizing force.
I'm definitely going to be channeling that punch in the gut image next time I do overhead presses. Okay, so what other movement mayhem awaits us?
Let's shift gears a little bit, and we'll talk about a common issue with squats.
Okay.
And that's the heels lifting off the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that elevating your heels with a weight plate can be kind of a quick fix for that.
Right.
But is that really addressing the root of the problem?
So you're right to question that.
Okay.
While elevating your heels can be a temporary solution to help you get a little bit deeper in your squat, it's essential to address that underlying issue, which is often tight calves or restricted ankle mobility.
So it's like putting a Band-Aid on a deeper problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I've also heard some arguments against elevating your heels during squats. What are your thoughts on that?
So some people believe that elevating your heels can actually mask those underlying mobility issues and potentially even lead to other compensatory movement patterns.
Interesting.
There's definitely some validity to that concern.
Yeah.
But I think it really depends on the individual and how it's being implemented.
So it's not just a black and white issue.
Right, exactly.
How about we explore some ways to address that ankle mobility issue head on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So first and foremost, incorporating regular calf stretches into your routine can make a huge difference. So think about simple stretches like gastrocnemius and soleus stretches.
Right.
You can also use a foam roller to release any tension in your calves.
So we're working on improving that range of motion in the ankle joint.
Yes.
And I imagine consistently practicing deep squats while focusing on keeping those heels grounded can also help.
Absolutely. It's about gradually increasing that depth as your mobility improves rather than forcing it.
Totally. Okay, so I'm starting to see how all of these pieces fit together. It's not just about isolating these individual muscles, but about understanding how our entire body moves as a system.
It's all connected.
All right, so what's next on our fault-finding mission?
Let's talk about a common mistake that often creeps into pull-ups. Shoulder shrugging.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely felt that one. Yeah. It's like you're trying to pull yourself up with your ears.
Right.
So why do people tend to do that?
So it often stems from a lack of awareness of proper scapular movement. So your shoulder blades should be gliding smoothly down and back as you initiate that pull-up. But when those muscles aren't firing correctly, you end up shrugging your shoulders and you're engaging your upper traps instead of your lats.
So instead of using those powerhouse muscles, side to back, we're kind of using these smaller, less efficient muscles in the shoulders. What's a good way to correct that?
So focus on pulling your shoulder blades down and back before you even initiate the pull-up. You can practice this by standing with your arms extended overhead. And then actively pull your shoulder blades down and together. Imagine putting your shoulder blades in your back pockets.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It
really helps you visualize that correct movement.
So we're establishing that mind-body connection again.
Yes, exactly.
Making sure that those muscles are engaging properly. This is so eye-opening. I'm realizing that so much of this is about fine-tuning these subtle details in our movement.
Absolutely.
So what's next?
All right, let's move on to a common fault with kettlebell swings. Overusing the arms.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking of a kettlebell swing as an arm exercise. But in reality, it's primarily a hip-driven movement.
That makes me think of those people who are swinging the kettlebell Like they're trying to bicep curl it?
Yeah.
So what's wrong with that approach?
When you rely too much on your arms,
Yeah.
you're not only reducing the efficiency of the swing,
Okay.
but you're also putting undue stress on your shoulders.
Oh, wow.
So the power of the swing should be coming from that explosive hip hinge, not from actively pulling with your arms.
So we're back to the power of the hips again.
There's a theme here.
Yeah. Why do people tend to default to using their arms?
So often, it comes down to a lack of understanding of that hip hinge.
Okay.
Or improper mechanics in general.
Okay.
If you're not hinging correctly or driving through your hips,
Right.
your arms are naturally going to want to take over.
So it's another case of addressing that root cause, which is the hip hinge, to fix the overall movement.
Oh, got it.
Now, they talked about practicing the hip hinge without a kettlebell. Yeah. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Absolutely. Practicing that hip hinge without any weight allows you to really focus on the mechanics of the movement and develop that mind-body connection.
You're right.
You can use a dowel rod for feedback. Or just stand in front of a mirror and watch yourself.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
See what it looks like.
Yeah. And once you feel comfortable with the movement, then you can start to add weight.
Okay.
But make sure you're still maintaining that same hip-driven power.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What else can we do to avoid that arm overuse trap during kettlebell swings?
So a helpful cue is to kind of visualize the kettlebell floating up to about shoulder height from the momentum of your hips.
Got it.
Not from you actively pulling with your arms.
Okay.
So imagine that your arms are just along for the ride.
Okay.
They're guiding the path of the kettlebell.
Yeah.
But they're not generating the power.
That's a great visualization. So what's our final movement fault for this deep dive?
Okay, let's wrap up with a fault that a lot of runners experience.
Okay.
Excessive forward lean.
Yeah, I've definitely seen runners who look like they're about to face plant.
Yeah.
So why is that forward lean such a problem?
So leaning too far forward can shift your center of gravity.
Okay.
And it can put extra stress on your lower back and make your running form less efficient.
Gotcha.
It's almost like you're constantly fighting against gravity.
So those tight hip flexors we talked about earlier probably contribute to this as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
Tight hip flexors can actually pull your pelvis forward.
Interesting.
Encouraging that excessive lean.
And it all kind of goes back to how everything's interconnected.
Exactly.
So what are some strategies to combat that forward lean?
So first and foremost, strengthening your core muscles is essential.
Oh, okay.
So a strong core is going to help you maintain that upright posture and prevent that excessive lean.
Oh, okay.
So incorporate exercises like planks, bird dogs, anti-rotation presses.
Okay, so we're working on building that internal support system.
Exactly.
What about those tight hip flexors? Any suggestions for addressing those?
So lunging hip flexor stretches, pigeon pose, even kneeling hip flexor stretches can help lengthen those muscles and improve your pelvic alignment.
This is also fascinating. I'm starting to really understand how all these seemingly small movement faults can really have this ripple effect throughout the body.
It really is fascinating.
It is. So now the big question is, how do we actually apply this knowledge?
Right.
How can we troubleshoot these faults in real time when we're working out?
That's where things get interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So the podcast had some great strategies for becoming more aware of your movement patterns.
All right.
We'll definitely dig into those after a quick break.
Sounds good. Okay, I'm all ears. Let's talk about how to become movement detectives in our own workouts.
So one of the simplest yet most effective methods is to film yourself.
Okay.
I know it can feel a little awkward at first.
Yeah.
But trust me, it's incredibly revealing.
Yeah.
So use your phone.
Okay.
Record your squats, your deadlifts, whatever exercise you're working on. And then just watch it back.
It's like having an instant replay of our form.
Exactly.
I can see how that would be really helpful to spot those subtle errors that we might not even be aware of.
Exactly. Sometimes we think we're doing something correctly.
Right.
But the video evidence shows otherwise.
Right, yeah.
So that objective feedback can be so valuable.
Yeah, and speaking of feedback, they also mentioned using mirrors. How can we utilize those effectively?
Mirrors are fantastic for real-time adjustments.
Okay.
So as you're performing an exercise, check your form in the mirror.
Okay.
Pay attention to your alignment, your posture, the overall movement pattern.
So it's about combining that external feedback from the video with that real-time self-monitoring in the mirror.
Exactly.
Okay, so what if we're still not sure if we're doing things correctly?
Don't hesitate to reach out
Okay.
and get feedback from a qualified coach or trainer.
Yeah.
They can provide expert guidance,
Okay.
spot those subtle nuances that you might miss, and really help you refine your technique.
It's like having a personal movement coach
Yeah, exactly.
in your corner.
Yeah.
It's amazing how these seemingly small details
I know.
can make such a big difference in our movement.
It's all about those micro adjustments
Yeah.
that lead to macro improvements.
I like that.
And the more aware we become
Yeah.
of our movement patterns, the more we can refine them and move with greater efficiency, power, and grace.
I'm starting to see how this all ties together. It's not just about, fixing our squats or our deadlifts. It's really about cultivating a more mindful and intentional approach to movement in our entire lives.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
We often compartmentalize movement.
We do.
We think of it as something we only do during our workouts.
Right.
But in reality, we're moving all the time.
Right.
Walking, sitting, standing, reaching, bending.
Pretty much everything.
All of it.
Yeah.
And the way that we perform
Yeah.
these everyday actions, it has a ripple effect on our bodies.
It's like those seemingly insignificant movement faults that we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
They might not cause immediate problems, but over time, they can lead to imbalances and discomfort and even pain.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
It really is.
It makes me think about how much time we spend sitting these days.
Oh my gosh, so much.
Most of us are hunched over our computers, slouching on the couch for hours on end. And that constant poor posture can shorten our hip flexors, weaken our core muscles around our shoulders.
And it just creates this cascade of issues that can impact everything.
Yeah.
From our breathing to our back health.
That makes me think of those standing desks that are becoming really popular now.
Yeah.
It seems like such a simple change, but I bet it can.
It can.
Make a big difference.
Absolutely.
In terms of our posture and our overall health.
Even just incorporating more movement throughout the day.
Okay.
Like taking short walks, stretching regularly.
Right.
Or just standing up and moving around every hour.
Okay.
Can make a huge impact.
So it's not about being perfect all the time.
Yeah.
It's really just about making those small conscious choices to move better throughout the day.
Exactly. It's about creating sustainable habits that support our overall well-being.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the importance of paying attention to our movement.
Yeah.
Both in the gym and in everyday life.
Absolutely.
What are some key takeaways you'd like our listeners to remember?
Okay, so first and foremost, remember that your body is this interconnected system.
Yes.
Addressing these movement faults isn't just about aesthetics.
Right.
It's about optimizing function, preventing injuries, and moving with greater ease and efficiency.
And it's not about striving for perfection.
Right.
It's really about progress.
Yeah.
It's about making those small adjustments over time.
Absolutely.
That lead to lasting change.
You got it.
So celebrate those small wins.
Yes.
And don't be afraid to ask for help along the way, whether it's filming yourself using a mirror or seeking guidance from a qualified coach.
Yeah.
There are so many resources available to support you on your movement journey.
Absolutely.
It's empowering to realize that we have this power to change our movement patterns and ultimately improve our overall well-being.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom to leave our listeners with?
Movement is a gift.
Ooh.
Embrace it, enjoy it, and let it empower you to live your best life.
Yeah, I love that, movement as a gift.
Yeah.
It really shifts the focus from something we have to do to something we get to do.
Exactly. And when we embrace movement with that sense of gratitude and appreciation, it really transforms the experience.
Like that.
Instead of dreading a workout or feeling limited by aches and pains, we can really find joy in that simple act of moving our bodies.
It makes me think of those moments where you're just moving effortlessly, whether it's dancing, hiking, or even just walking with a spring in your step.
Yes.
It feels so good.
Exactly. It's like finding that flow state where your mind and body are just in sync and you're fully present in the movement.
Yeah.
And you feel that sense of ease and freedom.
It's almost meditative.
Right.
In a way.
Yeah.
It's interesting how we've come full circle in this conversation. You know, we started by dissecting these seemingly insignificant movement faults.
Right.
And now we're talking about this profound impact that movement can have on our overall well-being.
It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
When we move well, we feel well.
I like that.
And when we feel well, we're more likely to make healthy choices in other areas of our lives.
Totally.
So it creates this upward spiral of health and vitality.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
Well, it has been fun.
I feel like we've uncovered so much about how our bodies move, how to identify and address these common faults, and ultimately how to create this more mindful and intentional approach to movement in our daily lives.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure exploring these concepts with you.
Thank you. Likewise.
And I have a feeling our listener is walking away from this deep dive with a whole new perspective on movement.
Absolutely.
And maybe even a few new tricks up their sleeve to improve their form and their overall well-being.
I hope so.
So to our listener, thank you for joining us on this exploration of movement.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights today.
Absolutely.
And feel inspired to embrace the power of movement in your own life.
Okay.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep moving.
Keep learning and keep moving.